Okay, Vietnam is part of the Greater Mekong sub-region. This region is very fast-growing. The intra-trade within this region is more than 10 billion US and is growing more than 10% a year. Vietnam is part of three major corridors. You have the south border corridor that links Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. You have the north-south corridor, which is Vietnam and China, and then you have the east-west corridor, which is Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar. So Vietnam is very well positioned to trade with all these countries. And within all these countries, the investment from the region has been more than 20 billion, and Vietnam has received 30% of all that money. And out of this 30%, about 87% has been invested in road network for Vietnam. So clearly, the road infrastructure, the trade is growing very fast in Vietnam and in the region. And this creates a need for trucking between Vietnam and the neighbor countries. And this is where the cross-border trucking is very important. Plus, the customs within ASEAN have been working together a lot to uniformize their processes. So now it's actually taking only a few hours to cross the border from Vietnam to Cambodia, from Vietnam to China, from Vietnam to Laos, Laos to Thailand. So all that together makes it very efficient in terms of lead time and in terms of cost. Cross-border trucking, in terms of cost, is less than half than air freight and is much faster than ocean freight. So it's many companies who currently do air freight by convenience should look at changing the mode of transport and looking at how should they use maybe trucking better. It might increase a little bit the lead time, but reduce their cost a lot. Companies also who use ocean freight with long lead times, a lot of delays, maybe sometimes production shortage, then they should look also at how they might use the cross-border trucking in order to make their supply chain more smooth, faster. So really, it's a third option. It will not cannibalize completely the air freight or the ocean freight, but every company should really know about it and should consider it in their supply chain. The rail between Europe and Asia has been actually for almost 10 years now growing very fast, especially China. China, they have this One Belt, One Road network that they have been promoting, and as part of that, rail is very important. China has invested billions in the railway networks. They also gave a lot of support to the neighboring countries like Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and so on. And so China now is using rail very intensively for the trade with Europe. But now it's the time also for Vietnam to benefit from it, because considering Vietnam is now very closely linked to China with the road freight, what we do is that we can very easily now ship containers into China, into Shenzhen, and from Shenzhen we catch the rail and go all the way into Europe. You save minimum 1 to 2 weeks in terms of lead times, depending whether you are in the north of Vietnam, in Hanoi, because of course Haiphong into Europe is a longer lead time than Ho Chi Minh into Europe, but then by truck it's faster from Haiphong or from Hanoi than from Ho Chi Minh. So it's basically giving a lot of advantage to companies that to use the rail. They go via China and they go all the way into Europe. It's clearly more expensive than ocean freight, but it's much faster than air freight. Sorry, not much faster than ocean, much faster than ocean freight. It's much cheaper than air freight, sorry. Then it's again a third option for the customers, for the companies in their supply chain. Because we see that the volume of rail is very fast increasing. A lot of investments are being made in rail. Plus, it's a very green transportation mode. It's actually greener than ocean freight, so it's the greenest of all. It's the most eco-friendly. So it's really the more the countries will invest in their infrastructure for rail, the more this product will become cheap, will become cost-effective, and then faster. So if we look very far in the future, if all the countries from here into Europe have the high-speed train, it would take from, let's say, Ho Chi Minh to Berlin, it would take maybe around 5 to 6 days only. If you ship by air freight, it's basically the same. So sooner or later, it will take some time, but one day, most of the trade will be by rail. And this is really what we try to promote currently in Vietnam, and not only Vietnam, neighboring countries also try to do that, because we see it as the future. Of course, it will not replace air freight and ocean freight overnight, but it's coming, and we need to be prepared. So the development of the cross-border road freight and the rail between Vietnam and Europe at the end demands a lot of investment from all the countries. For Vietnam itself, it means that there is first a third option to ship to Europe or to ship intra-Asia or intra-ASEAN and China. It's giving more options, means more cost-effective solutions also. But in terms of logistics here, then companies need to change a little bit their supply chain, look at how they can benefit from that, instead of just thinking air freight and ocean freight. That's very important. And then from a more macroeconomic point of view, the government of Vietnam should really look into how they can faster develop the roads, the road infrastructure, because in fact, if you look at the road from Ho Chi Minh to Hanoi, for example, we have some areas that are nice and real highways, but still too many parts of that are slow and dangerous. So the development of the road network and the upgrade of the road system will really make a difference and make it even more sustainable and attractive for companies. And it will help to reduce the logistics cost, makes Vietnam more competitive on a global scale. When you compare Vietnam cost, now currently companies, they come here maybe for low-cost labor, but the logistics cost is still quite high. So by upgrading the road network, using more the road system, then the logistics cost will go down, and it will make Vietnamese companies even more successful in the global economy compared to other neighbor countries. Plus the rail is another investment that the country should make, is high-speed train between Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, not only for passengers, which would be great, but also for freight, because it will free a little bit the road. It will reduce the pollution for Vietnam, which is a big topic also in Vietnam, because pollution is going up. So rail is, as I mentioned earlier, is a very green mode of transport. So promoting rail, not only for passengers, but speed train for cargo, will make the roads safer, will make the environment cleaner, and will reduce the cost for companies, also not only from Vietnam into Europe, because then you can catch the train all the way into Europe from Hanoi, then going into via China, going to Europe, but also domestically, the transportation within Vietnam will then become much faster and cheaper.